We want to talk about the last episode with Mr. James Q Quick. And it's very important to get the Q. And there was a whole conversation I had with James before we started recording that discussed why do you emphasize the Q? And going back through James's social media, through his YouTube, through everything, it's James Q Quick. And I really appreciate the branding aspect of how you put yourself out there, how you control your narrative. I think James did a really great job of kind of conversing why he's interested in controlling his narrative. So I think we should kind of start the conversation there. I'll start with, I have always tried to be brand centric, like selling my brand, Kevin the developer, Kevin the .NET guy, Kevin the community guy. There's a lot of different narratives. And I do a really poor job of focusing on how I want people in the world to see me. And I really should spend more time on that. I should find an exercise or something to do. But I'm conscious of it. I don't do a good job of it like James. James does an amazing job of it. But I always felt this was important because when, especially in consulting, when people need certain skills, they go looking for specific folks. And if you're either not out there, you're quiet, or you're selling the wrong persona, it could be really easy for someone to overlook you. But if you focus down and you're very deliberate about how you want people in the world to see you, so I want someone to see me as Kevin, the .NET Azure guy. When they have a need for material I put out, or for training I offer, or for consulting services I provide, they know directly that that is the guy to go to for a certain set of content, a certain set of skills. Like if I'm going to quote Liam Neeson from Taken, I have a particular set of skills. I need people to know what those particular sets of skills are. Sean, I know you and I were chatting a little bit about this before we jumped on the call, but what's kind of your take on the branding aspect of anyone that's trying or should be trying to put themselves out there?
Love the idea. And it's actually really important, not even for just the entrepreneurial zone or world, but also for the employment world that I'm very familiar with as well. So one of the things I do a lot of is interviews. I interview a lot of people. I also do some interviews from time to time as well. I try to do some just to kind of, see where I'm at personally in my own skill sets, see what I'm capable of. And I've toyed around a lot with LinkedIn, with my LinkedIn profile. That's one place I think a lot of people really don't pay a lot of attention to. So a tip for me from me would be pay more attention to your LinkedIn and update it and make it seem like, not really seem like you probably are this person, but maybe you don't give yourself enough credit, but make it really seem like the valuable person, the valuable skills, engineer, whatever you are, whatever you want to call yourself, title that you want to be, or you want to get more jobs doing, as update your LinkedIn to make it seem like you're that person. And I actually I love how he talked about the personal brand, because I think probably 90% of engineers probably own their name.com or something similar.
I wish I did. Yeah.
I have SeanMarin.com, but guess where it goes to? My LinkedIn. So it's easy enough for me when I'm out and about with people. If I make a good connection or something, I just tell them, hey, go to SeanMarin.com. And it redirects them to my LinkedIn. That's a way to get connected to me. Send me a message or stay up to date on the things I'm working on. I don't do a good job of actively posting on LinkedIn. That's something I think personally I could probably do a little better at, because that really does start to create some authority more and more in not only your network, but you can do certain hashtags and such too. So people can see a lot more activity for the areas of work that you're posting about or in all the time. I know paid speaking in keynotes was one of the things James Q Quick mentioned, and we'll talk about that more here in a minute. But I guess because I'm always going two different routes. So I have my main gig, right, where I'm the VP of engineering. And then I also have my side hustle entrepreneurial stuff always going on as well. I have a software consulting company that I run as well. And one of the things I'll put on there, believe it or not, I control the narrative of that, right? So I'll put on there, I've done work for multi-billion-dollar Fortune 100 companies because I have as an employee, but I've also been consulted for most of my consulting gigs have been for small to medium-sized business. I haven't done any large enterprise type consulting work, but I have, and I do have experience, performing software jobs or managing engineers, outsourcing engineers, doing the work myself as an engineer in these large enterprise corporations. So that's something I can definitely put on my portfolio that I have experience working in. So I could use that experience both in the consulting field and picking up new clients, as well as pursuing the career corporate ladder track at the same time. And one of the things, I'm VP of engineering now. Next step for me is CTO. So that's what I'm trying now. And after the episode, I think it's something I've known I need to probably pay more attention to, is that like personal image on LinkedIn. If that's the next step, maybe trying to control the narrative a little bit more around, I don't know, like talking more about the things I'm doing strategically for my company, right? And maybe the networking with other CTOs, like maybe a mastermind group or something with other CTOs connecting there. So the personal brand, controlling that narrative, it's important in both fields, whether it be your employment field or your individual, side thread that you got going on.
One of the things you kind of triggered in me when you were just talking is, yes, LinkedIn is incredibly important. And I think it's more important than a lot of us give it credit for. I have a very good friend right now who is in the process of finding his next opportunity at that C-level position. And one of the things we have discussed is that LinkedIn is a critical part of the strategy, but it should have been more critical 6 months ago. And he should have been putting more time and effort into the LinkedIn, into the thought leadering. I know we hate buzzwords, but he should have been putting out content, thinking about cementing himself as an expert in a particular set of skills.
I've actually talked about in the challenge how I found someone to do some work for me through LinkedIn. I looked up WordPress developer and I looked at all the different profiles, and from the profile I can see their experience, and I was able to gain some trust and authority by the different, just really how their profile looked initially, and then reached out to a few, interviewed them after that for the job, and then picked someone through there. So you will be found, right, through platforms like LinkedIn, and you do control the narrative on those. You even in your resume, if you're posting for a job, you control all the lingo and verbiage and the way you're formatting that as well. So give yourself a little bit more credit.
I'll give you a great example. I did a consulting gig a long time ago that was, let's see, if I put it in LinkedIn terms, I helped the United States Air Force with their training logistics. And that sounds really fancy. What I really did was I turned an Access database into a SQL Server database and added a not so fancy front end to the front of it. Now, if I'm just talking developer to developer, that's probably what I'm going to tell you. I was messing with Access. I turned it into SQL Server. We dealt with all this like data stuff. But if I'm talking to a business-minded person or someone I potentially want to see as a colleague or a person to hire me for higher level skills, I'm going to use the fanciest language possible. I'm trying to control that narrative to make the simple thing I did seem a lot more complicated. Chad, do you have any thoughts on the personal branding conversation? Sorry, Sean and I have just been going back and forth.
No, you're good. I've enjoyed it because I've actually thought a lot about personal branding, but I don't feel that I've done a very good job at it. It's talking about being James Q Quick everywhere. Well, I've had the handle coolness, if you will, but I don't spell it right because it's available everywhere. So that is KEWLNISS. And if you're going to spell it wrong, you spell it all the way wrong, right? But what was interesting was back in the days of MySpace, so this is forever ago, somebody else grabbed that name. And at the time, I was in my I don't remember how old it was, but it was, however long ago MySpace was. So I was mid-20s, late 20s. I don't even know now. But anyway, it was a 14-year-old girl that grabbed that name. And I thought, so I have the same mentality as a 14-year-old girl. That's good. That's wonderful. But other than MySpace, everything else I kind of grabbed that. But what I found is, when I was doing more things professionally, I try to rely more on my name. And, but there's a lot of Chad Carters out there. There's a blues singer, Chad Carter, and there's a few other things. And I do have one of the domains, chadcarter.net, though. Couldn't get the .com. I ended up having, or hearing about this thing called the JK5 method. It's from Jenna Kuchar, so it's her method, JK5. And she talks about, it's mainly around Instagram, is kind of what her focus was, but it's all about wherever you're putting your content out, that you pretty much kind of have like 5 things that you're known for, if you will. And so when I did my site at chadcarter.net, I actually kind of put those 5 things on there, which was simply Christian, entrepreneurial, investor, technologist, and gamer. And then on my Twitter, or now X, I kind of have the same thing. I put a few other things in there, but I try to have that consistency between those two. So from a personal branding thing, I definitely don't have that dialed in like I should. On the flip side, I will mention this. I'm also kind of big into the NFT space. And in the NFT space, everybody has their profile picture as an actual, NFT, or usually it's some cartoon image or whatever for that project that they care about. Well, I'm really big into this one project called Drill Club, and all the people that I'm around have all these drill PFPs. It's like a mandrill, cartoon mandrill. And I'm the only one, for the most part, that's really active in that community that doesn't. It's just my face, the same avatar images that I've had for the last, 10, 15 years. And I've done that for consistency. And I've told the folks, I said, well, once these NFTs are selling for a certain price, then I'll switch over. But whatever I have, so when that does happen, then I'll actually switch to this cartoon picture across the board. And that's where I'll be, versus right now it's this one thing. So while I'm not really good at the whole personal branding thing, I have tried to be consistent across the board, because if you find me on YouTube or Twitter or LinkedIn, it's me, because it's the same black and white image that I have. The Jenna 5, JK5, the idea with that is you try to have, 5 things that you care about, the 5 top things you care about, because like on Instagram in particular, again, I'm not on Instagram, but when she's talking about putting things on Instagram, that you actually post around those 5 different topics, and you're not kind of wearing things out. Right now, my posts on Twitter, again, are all around Drill Club, because that's the main circle that I'm in. It is there. When what would be ideal from a personal brand is actually kind of back out of that some, not be so focused on that, and kind of, filter other things in as well. And yeah, LinkedIn, I've not even full with LinkedIn in forever. So I was thinking like 5 years old. I think it's the last time I updated that thing. So yeah, I have some work to do there.
I was having a conversation with my friend Taylor Desson, and I had a conversation with him specifically about like avatars and headshots and how do you present yourself. And one of the things he kind of leans in on, and I think if he's on the podcast now, he lean into this a little bit more, is that you really want your avatar that you're putting out there to be your authentic self. And not hide behind, because there are a lot of folks. We had David Neal a couple of weeks ago, and there was a time where everyone was sporting a David Neal avatar, and that actually kind of goes against the theory. Like, that's not an authentic version of yourself. You have to think of it from the other side. If I'm an employer or a potential person looking to hire you for consulting or for any other services, and I'm stalking your social media, whether it's your LinkedIn or Twitter, Instagram, wherever you might be, because people do that. They stalk anyone that they might not know personally, and they see an image of me as a David Neal avatar. They might have a different opinion of me as they would with my avatar is just me smiling at an angle, and so they might have a different opinion of you depending on that. And as we know, and because it's a conversation about branding and controlling your narrative, you want to be able to control that first impression that people have of you.
Yeah, and I would just say that it's important that you have your brand that is authentic. So even if it is a avatar representation of yourself, a David Neal avatar or something of that nature, then that's fine if those clients that you're trying to attract will be okay with that. Right. So it also depends on what it is you're trying to do and who's going to be looking at your persona across the board. So you can be your authentic self, have some flair, show what it is you want to show off, and either come to the conclusion that if somebody doesn't want to work with me because of this, then so be it. Probably don't want to work with them anyway. Or no, that's actually a very important thing. I should actually taper this down a little bit so I do present myself in such a particular way. I think it's something critical to keep in mind.